There are many reasons I find myself always coming back to playing a Nuzlocke, and one of my favorite parts is using Pokemon I typically don't use. But nowadays, with how many Nuzlockes I've played, I find myself rarely ever losing Pokemon in a vanilla game, and end up using the same 6 to 10 Pokemon during a playthrough. Typically, I only ever lose Pokemon if I'm not paying attention, mess up a damage calc, over or underestimate a Pokemon. Alright, maybe this happens a little more than I'm insinuating, but let me paint this narrative, okay? So, I think it's about time that I give the other 80% of Pokemon locked away in the box some time in the sun, by giving each of them a single battle to prove themselves to me. So, I call this a hardcore Nuzlocke, but if I'm getting rid of a Pokemon after one battle, then why does this even matter? Well, A, it's clickbaity, and B, I mainly just wanted to carry some other rules over, such as, I can't use items in battle, I'll be playing on set mode, I can't overlevel past the next gym, and I'll be playing with the dupes clause. And for this challenge, the special rule is that after I've used a Pokemon, it's no longer usable, specifically during a battle against a trainer. If I include wild Pokemon, then this doubles as a no XP challenge for the first half of the game, which I suspect won't be fun for anyone. For a Pokemon to be considered as being used, it has to come out during the battle. Simply being in my party doesn't count, but once it does come out on the field, regardless of whether or not it actually does anything, it'll be thrown in the bin. And if at any point I wipe or run out of Pokemon, that's a reset. Torchic is my favorite starter in the series, but even I can admit that it's the one that struggles the most during an Emerald playthrough. So, welcome aboard, Torchic. Well, I'm glad I'm not counting wild Pokemon because this challenge would have already been over right then. Alright, let's address the main problem with this challenge. From the moment that you leave Little Root Town to you taking on the Pokémon League, you get around 40 encounters, give or take depending on your rule set. There are very clearly more than 40 battles in the game, so we already don't have enough Pokemon. I spent around an hour trying to think of a workaround until I realized I'm playing a self-imposed challenge that maybe 200 people will watch until the end, so why am I overthinking this? I went with the simple solution of giving myself 2 encounters per route. Might sound a little cheaty, but it's the easiest way to keep track, and honestly speaking, I'm not even sure if that's enough. I've done very little planning going into this challenge. Also, I refuse to give my Pokemon nicknames. I suck at coming up with names, and if I have to think of 80 of them, I'll be spending more time on the keyboard than actually playing the game. We do have to use Torchic against our first battle with May, but we don't have Pokeballs yet, so with my rules, the challenge hasn't started. But right after our battle, we do indeed get Pokeballs, and we can immediately catch our first 4 Pokemon. On routes 101 and 103, there are 4 Pokemon. Both share Zigzagoon and Poochyena, and one has Wurmple, the other Wingull. Because of this, we can actually guarantee all of them. First, I search the grass of route 101. If we land Wurmple, perfect. We land Poochyena, that's fine. We skip the next encounter here for now and move up to route 103. Now the only Pokemon that we can catch here are Zigzagoon and Wingull. And since we've now got both Poochyena and Zigzagoon, we can guarantee ourselves a Wurmple back on route 101. The reason I'm showing you this is because with access to 2 encounters per route, and Emerald still being a relatively early game in the franchise, we can manipulate the encounters on quite a few routes to get as many Pokemon as possible. I said 80 earlier because I doubled 40, but realistically there'll be quite a few routes where we exhaust the entire encounter table, so the actual number is probably lower. And I'll be doing little things like this throughout the playthrough, so I thought I'd ease you into it. I won't mention every case where I do this, but an interesting one here and there. And right after leaving the town, we have our first forced battle on route 102. Emerald's an interesting game where almost every early game encounter is useful in one way or another. But since we're forced to give one up, sadly I think Poochyena is the least useful. Here we can also get 2 more encounters. We have the common Losad, a 4% Ralts, and a 1% Seedot. We of course land the former 2, and then immediately run into the Seedot. It's actually good that it works out this way, as the Seedot line can be found on other routes, whereas Ralts is only found here. And then straight on to route 104, we have 2 more guaranteed encounters. Since we've already caught the other Pokemon, we can get both Marill and Taillow. Taillow is a great Pokemon that can solo quite a few battles, but our Marill has the ability Thick Fat, which is less helpful than its other ability Huge Power, which doubles its attack. This does mean that we can at least save 1 Pokemon for later, who we can guarantee in Petalburg Woods. Here we have even 2 more guaranteed encounters. I promise I'm not cheating, it's just happened to work out this way. We catch Shroomish, who can guarantee us a win against one of the harder battles, and Slakoth, who's interesting. And here we have the first of many optional trainers that have the potential to catch us. This is more of a limitation I'm just setting for myself, rather than something that affects the video, but I won't be allowing myself to soft reset optional battles. If I run into a trainer I could have dodged, I have to commit to losing a Pokemon. We've run past a few optional trainers already, but all of them are guaranteed skips, in the sense that if we're paying attention and we play right, then we never have to run into them. We'll call them blind trainers, but a few trainers, like this bug catcher, who can look anywhere between 2 to 4 directions randomly, are left completely to RNG. We'll call these types of trainers wildcards. Now 90% of the times, this doesn't matter, we can just walk past them while they're not looking, but they have a chance to look in our direction the very frame that we move forward, and in that case we can't do anything. We managed to dodge him the first try, and then I realized that we have a forced battle coming up, and I haven't updated my team to include Pokemon that I would rather sacrifice. So back to Petalburg, grab Slackoth, managed to dodge the bug catcher one more time, and we let Slackoth take care of the Team Aqua member. I actually believe that Slacking has a lot of potential in Nuzlocke despite having the worst ability forcing it to skip every other turn, but for this challenge, it's something that we don't really want to play around. Poochyena even lowers our accuracy, meaning we could even miss during a turn that we can move. Thankfully Slackoth pulls through and we can get past him fairly painlessly. Stat drops are a lot harder to play around in this challenge considering we can't just switch out to get rid of them, as that means that we'll have to get rid of another Pokemon. And then there's yet another bug catcher that we're able to dodge. Through the forest, this is still Route 104, so no new encounters, but we find a few more optionals. Here we have a spinner who, as the name suggests, constantly spins around in the said direction. We can dodge them really easily, and then past him there's a static trainer. These will only ever stay in one spot looking in the same direction, and they're either the easiest trainers to skip, or the worst, as they're a forced battle, no in between. This one's a blind trainer. But up next is a trainer class I forgot about. These twins are a double battle, and as you can imagine, we have to use up to 2 Pokemon during a double battle. Well, sort of. Because this is a fixed double battle, we can go all the way back to Petalburg, ditch all of our Pokemon except for Slackoth, dodge the 2 bug catchers once again, and now we can walk right past them. These trainer classes won't battle you if you only have a single Pokemon in your party, but it's important to remember that this only works with double battle trainer classes. If you run into 2 trainers at once, you're still forced to battle both of them, and we finally made it safely to the next city. Past Rustboro, we have another route, which actually has a whole load of encounters to choose from. We have the common Incada, who we absolutely want as it will make our lives so much easier, a 10% Abra, who certainly is not a bad Pokemon in this game, and a 2% Skitty, who we'll just not talk about. But before I get any of these, Whismur 2 exists on this route, but it's catchable in the cave right at the end, so we'll want to go there first. So at the Pokemon Mart, I grabbed myself a few repels. If you're wondering where all this money's coming from, technically since we have access to berries and soil, we could in theory get unlimited money by planting them and then selling the harvest, which in practice would take an insane amount of time and is certainly not feasible. Look, I know this is lame and I never do this in any of my other challenges, but the thing is, with us skipping most of the trainers, we get no prize money and we barely have any items to sell. And I really do not want this run turning into a situation where I'm rationing out money for balls and repels. Could make for a fun challenge in its own right, but it's not the spirit that I want to go for with this run, and it's certainly not fun to translate into a video. Anyway, now I can skip all the encounters on Route 116, and this is a route that I was dreading. There are minefields all around us, with a lot of the trainers being wildcards. I opt to take the south path where the bug catcher is a spinner, and then run into a schoolgirl who I was convinced was static. I waited for a good 20 seconds until I walked past her, only to realize that she too was a wildcard. Almost just lost a Pokemon. But just past her, we have the absolute worst sight we could have come across. We have 2 wildcards facing each other, meaning not only do we have to dodge them both at once, but there's also a chance that we'll have to do a double battle if they both look at us at the same time. And then after that, we have to do it again. I don't know how I managed to get past the first checkpoint on the first try, but now we have another dilemma. This time one of the trainers is a forced battle, who we can't trigger without walking in front of him. Look, a forced battle's fine, we know regardless of how we play, we'll have to fight them at some point. I decided to use Lotad as Ludicolo is a fine Pokemon, but we find Waterstones way too late into the game, and Lombree's just bad. It's about as strong as it starts first stage. The issue arises in what happens in the next 2 seconds. When you're coming out of a battle, there's a 1 to 2 second delay before you can move, and that can be enough time for the wildcard to swing around and look at you. We make it. I'm really not someone that's fazed by horror games or jump scares, but I physically flinched when I saw him turn around. God, I never want to do that again. I let the repel run out, head into the tunnel and catch Whismur. This is the only Pokemon that you can get here, so like I mentioned earlier, we aren't going to be getting a full 80 encounters this playthrough. And then I realized I made the dumbest mistake I could have. I forgot to fight the gym, meaning we haven't triggered the Team Aqua event here. So I have to do that maneuver all over again. How could I forget literally the only significant thing the city has to offer? Whatever, let's just get our encounters. Are you f***ing serious? My first encounter on this route, the first route where we don't have guaranteed encounters, and it's the 2% Skitty. Delcatty is the worst designed Pokemon Game Freak have ever created. I've already gone on a massive rant in my Gale of Darkness video, so I'll spare you the monologue. But if you're interested, go check it out. It's a personal favorite video of mine, and Delcatty and I have a history. Please, at the very least, let me get the very common Encada. Another one. Stop taunting me. Seriously, where are you all coming from? Go away. No Encada. Whatever, Alakazam's still an amazing Pokemon. Lovely. So we have a whole host of incredible encounters, and our only takeaway is the 2% Skitty. I have the best luck in some of the worst situations. If you're wondering why I wanted an Encada so badly, it's the only Pokemon that evolves into 2 different Pokemon at the same time. 2 encounters in 1. And Shedinja gets the ability Wonder Guard, which lets it dodge any attack that's not super effective. I would usually ban this Pokemon, but I thought for this challenge, it could be my one-time use trump card. But now, one of the late game bosses is going to be a nightmare. It was such a common encounter too. On this topic, I'm not banning any Pokemon this run. As long as it fits within my other rule set, it's legal. So don't worry, no Rayquaza since I'll break the level cap rule. And with that fumble, let's take on the first gym. I would have actually preferred to use Wingull here, but since it's part flying, weak to rock, I use Marill instead, who can solo Roxanne. Nosepass is funny since it has Rock Tomb, which is stronger than Tackle, but because it's a speed lowering move and isn't outright super effective against Marill, since Marill is already slower, it will never use it. The potion spam makes this longer, but that's Roxanne down. It's a shame since Marill with Thick Fat could have soloed Flannery, the Fort Gym Leader, as it makes Fire quadruple resist. I should note that I thought it'd be fun keeping track of my available and trash Pokemon on the display, but I'll be doing this on the fly, so it might not be right at all times. And I'll likely be fixing it throughout the run, so take it with a grain of salt. Alright, now we can trigger the Team Aqua event. Fuck you. Get out of here, Skitty. We leave Route 116 with no encounters. We're forced to fight the Team Aqua Grunt, so I let Whismur handle him. I've always felt Exploud is a bit of a noob trap Pokemon, as people think it's really good because it can learn a lot of TMs. It basically has a Gen 1 learn set. But its stats are so bad that it's almost never worth wasting them on it. Literally any Pokemon that gets stabbed would appreciate the TMs more than Exploud. May I swear to God. Good. I know this is optional, but I always feel self-doubt when she forces me to stop. But with our first badge, and possibly the lengthiest beginning to one of my videos, we can set sail towards Dewford. Arriving at Dewford, we can pretty much immediately take on the gym. Despite being an early stage bug, Wurmple is actually a great encounter, as both of its evolved forms can solo Brawly. Out of the two, I prefer Dustox, but we get Beautifly instead. Either's fine as they both 4 times resist fighting. His gym's pitch black, but thankfully all of the trainers are optional, and I'm not above using a map. The reason Dustox is better is because Beautifly gets Gust, which is physical in this generation, and all of Brawly's Pokemon know Bulk Up, raising both attack and defense. Since we're more or less immune to fighting, we can get through Machop really easily, but we can't one-shot Meditite, and it uses Reflect, halving physical moves. Pair that and Makuhita using Bulk Up, raising his defense even further. I was kinda worried, but we can get through just spamming Gust. I'm not sure how much longer we can get away with just using 1 Pokemon per gym, so we really don't want to mess up the early game by losing encounters. We've been getting loads of encounters up till now, but remember this makes future ones sparse, and we've barely even hit the trainer rush we'll be seeing during the second half. But Granite Cave houses a whole table of encounters, all available to us, so no guaranteed encounters this time. I decided to search the lowermost floor where Sableye is the most common, and the game took pity on me as he's the first one that we find. I also wanted either the very common Aron, or preferably Geodude, but we land Zubat instead, which sucks. Not because Zubat's a bad Pokemon, but we have a guaranteed one a little later, and this means that we lose yet another encounter. But we need all the Pokemon that we can get right now, so I didn't want to delay the encounters any further. Before leaving Dewford, we can get 2 fishing encounters with the old rod you can pick up here, Magikarp and the slightly less common Tentacle. This might sound like heresy considering they're both solid Pokemon, but water types are the most disposable Pokemon in this game, with how many there are. At this point, I split my Pokemon into 2 categories, powerhouses to counter specific bosses and disposable Pokemon for randoms. Both are just as important, but boss counters need to stay alive for their respective bosses, whereas disposable Pokemon can be used whenever. Sailing to Slateport, this beach too is a minefield. There are tons of trainers hiding beneath umbrellas you could accidentally run into, but if you stick to the west side, you can avoid all of them. Coming up, we have 2 Team Aqua battles back to back, and that means we have to lose 2 more encounters. Thing is, pretty much all of my current Pokemon are useful to some extent, so I go up to the further route and catch 2 more Pokemon, Gulpin and Electrike. Electrike's a common, so it was expected, but this sucks as we've effectively lost another encounter later on now. Honestly speaking, the encounters here are pretty bad, so this is perfect for the next 2 battles. We do run into a new situation here, however. After taking 1 grunt down with Gulpin, we're thrown into the next battle immediately before being able to switch around my team. In this case, I just have to switch out to an available Pokemon on turn 1, and accept that I'll just have to miss a turn. I'll let Electrike take the second grunt, we'll get more electric types later. Unfortunately, this route is terrifying for a challenge like this, as we have a number of force battles, and a couple of wildcards that we need to dodge. The first of which being a double battle. Now this isn't one that we can skip, as these are actually 2 individual battles triggered at the same time. If we come here with just 1 Pokemon, we'll still have to do both battles, just 1 at a time. While all my current Pokemon are useful, I decided to give up on Golbat and Linoone. I love Crobat, but it's just a nice Pokemon to have and pivot into. It doesn't really excel at any one particular battle. And I know Linoone's amazing for the Elite Four, but we actually need to get there first. We're able to skip the wild card, but next we have our first rival battle since the Nuzlocke started, and this one's pretty well known for being quite difficult for this stage in the game, but we have the perfect Pokemon for her. Before fighting May, I spent some time fishing in the adjacent lake until we found Tentacle, and then I let Swallow spam Growl until he finally got poisoned by Poison Sting. This means that we can go into the May fight with his ability Guts triggered. This raises his attack by 50% if statused, and now Swallow can one-shot Lombre, 1-shot Slugma, and 2-shot Marsh Stomp. That one was actually closer than I thought, and that's because Swallow has the timid nature, lowering his attack, but only losing 1 Pokemon to her is pretty big. A little further into this route, we have yet another forced double battle. I waited here for a good minute, just hoping I was wrong. Now typically wild double battles are pretty bad for Nuzlocke, since there's always a chance that one of your Pokemon has to take 2 attacks in 1 turn. In this challenge, we would actually prefer fighting both of them at once. This is because even though a Pokemon can only be used for 1 battle, this is sort of a loophole to allow them to fight 2. And this time I actually decided to give up Tentacle and Gyarados. I know, both are amazing Pokemon, and Gyarados is one I usually ban. So why am I wasting it on a random battle? Well, like I mentioned, water types are disposable, and while Gyarados is amazing, it's slightly less amazing in this generation with no physical special split, and like Crobat, it's just a nice Pokemon to have in the bag so you can abuse its ability Intimidate, which lowers the opponent's attack. It doesn't really counter any one particular boss battle. Watson is one of the biggest difficulty spikes in the game, especially if you don't have the exact Pokemon to counter him. Since we didn't pick Mudkip and didn't get Geodude, he's gonna be an issue, but we do have 1 Pokemon that can put up a pretty good fight. Before taking on the gym, I grabbed 2 encounters from the route west of Morwal. All the trainers up to the grass patch are blind. Here I find the 2 most common encounters, Oddish and Illumise. Both are fine. They're both support Pokemon, so again, they're not really too useful for a particular battle. Well, before we can enter the gym, Wally forces us to trash a Pokemon. Got an Illumise. And then in the gym, I tried way too hard to find a pacifist path, but had to accept that the youngster in the middle was a forced battle. Gloom can take this one. Zigzagoon and Gulpin in an electric type gym. Classic early Pokemon games. Now I'm not too confident if we can get away with using just 1 Pokemon, but Breloom can certainly put a dent in his team. Voltorb can be a pretty scary Pokemon and is fast and can use self-destruct if his HP is low, but Breloom gets a Mach Punch which has priority. Electrike's weak and goes down in 2 hits, and Magneton's weak to fighting, so it too goes down in 2 hits. But it managed to land a crit before going down. That sucks, as it's arguably Watson's strongest Pokemon attack-wise, so that was the worst attack we could have taken. And now Manectric comes in with Breloom hurt. We're somehow still not paralyzed, so we can comfortably get off a Leech Seed, which will do some passive damage while recovering our HP. And this was needed as Mach Punch doesn't really seem to do that much, and Manectric does just enough damage to make this close. And then we get paralyzed. The speed drop doesn't matter as Mach Punch always moves first, but that 25% chance to miss a turn could make all the difference. But Breeding stays winning, landing the Mach Punch, taking Manectric down, and earning us the 3rd badge with only 1 Pokemon. That was about as well as it could have gone. I really should have given him a Cherry Berry, but I don't really know if I can get one without fighting optional trainers. I should mention, since I'm giving myself unlimited money, I set the limitation that I can't use the game corner to get any TMs, so we don't have access to easy flamethrowers, thunderbolts, or ice beams. With the ability to use Rock Smash, we can head up to Route 111, where we can get 2 encounters now, but would rather hold off as this route doubles as the desert, which we can't access right now. We're starting to run low on Pokemon, so I decided to at least get 1 guaranteed encounter here. Breaking the rocks for almost 20 minutes, we finally land Geodude. Would have been nice for the last gym, but Golem's still a great Pokemon. Does anyone know what the odds are for this? I swear it shouldn't have taken this long. Maybe there was a flag that I needed to trigger. Moving on to Route 112, we have to dodge 2 more wild cards. The ones that look in all 4 directions are actually much easier to handle as they only have a 1 in 4 chance to look in your direction, even if they turn. Here's another instance where we can only catch 1 Pokemon, Numel, as the only other one is Marill, who we've already used. And then we have 2 more wild cards. These routes are starting to get terrifying now, especially with our dwindling numbers. In the Fiery Path, almost all of the Pokemon here are new encounters. We catch the common Coughing and the somewhat rare Torkoal. This one's really defensive, so it could be useful in an upcoming battle. Oh god, not again. Double wildcards seem to be a trend. It's a shame since I really wanted Slugma. Slugma's horrible, but on Route 113, the only encounters are Spinda, Slugma, and the 5% Skarmory. We of course don't land the 5% when we want it, getting the 2 common, far worse encounters instead. Every trainer past the double wildcards are blind, and I miraculously managed to dodge these 2. Not because they're difficult to dodge, but because I've consistently messed this up every time I've played Emerald. The trick is to actually start running with 1 talent between you and their path. If you start right next to them, there's a chance that you might bump into them, and that 2-second delay is enough for them to see you. And then past Fall Arbor Town, we can get 2 more encounters. Swablu and Seviper are more or less guaranteed, as Nuzleafe's a 1%er. But after that Skitty, I can't be sure about anything. On the way to Meteor Falls, there's another force battle next to a wild card, but we can just talk to him to trigger it directly. Goodbye Spinda. Here in Meteor Falls, we could have gotten both Zubat and Solrock, but now Solrock's the only encounter that we can get. Getting Zubat early unlocked a special guaranteed encounter for us later. Thankfully no battles are here in this game unlike Ruby and Sapphire, but now we have to walk all the way back to the Fiery Path, dodging all of the wild cards on the way. Fuck. How did I manage to dodge both of the double wild cards on the first try and then mess up on the second? Also, I've never noticed how unhinged this lady is. What does somewhat decent mean in this context, just speaking to a 10-year-old? Well, Coughing's turn to shine. Since we don't plan on using her again, I can use a special move I typically can't in Nuzlocke. Coughing goes out with a bang. So that's 2 Pokemon Lost optionals now. That doesn't sound too bad, but we haven't even hit the worst routes in the game yet. We need to preserve as many Pokemon as possible. Through the Fiery Path, we can take the cable car up to Mount Chimney, and just as quickly as we've got a bunch of encounters, we're about to see a massacre. The first battle here is another double battle, so we lose both Numel and Slugma. I'm not too upset about this. But next we have the first admin battle. Tabitha uses 4 Pokemon, and considering our selection of disposable Pokemon aren't that powerful, this could be a bit too much for one Mon. I let Torkoal take the wheel, and he comes with the move Curse, raising attack and defense, but lowering speed, which isn't something that he needs anyway. We use this twice, and then he's able to sweep through the team with Body Slam. Alright, that went pretty well. But next we have to fight the leader, and for him, I think we can use one of our powerhouses. Earlier I evolved Geodude into Graveler, and then traded with my friends to get Golem, and he should be able to solo. I do have Seviper in the back if needed. Annoyingly, Maxi leads with Mightyena, who has Intimidate lowering our attack, and since we can't just switch out without losing a Pokemon, we're stuck with the drop. Magnitude 7 is pretty respectable, but that's less than half now, and even Magnitude 8 fails to pick up the kill. This gives Maxi a chance to heal and land one more attack before we take Mightyena down. Why do I only land crits when I least need them? And we're already onto the Ace Camerupt. We have a type advantage, but so does he. Luckily we move first using Magnitude, landing Magnitude 10, which if you didn't know has 150 base power, 50% stronger than Earthquake, of course getting the one shot. And finally, with only Zubat remaining, Golem can go out with a bang. You know, Golem's quickly becoming one of my favorites recently. He's just been really useful the few times I've had to use him. But now we have a small issue. Right as we enter Jagged Pass, there looks to be a forced battle. The last Pokemon on my team is a Viper, and the nearest PC is either in Morwell or Fall Arbor Town, both of which requires us to dodge multiple wildcards to get to. I could fight this trainer now and then risk getting caught by a trainer later in the route, but that would technically mean that I lose the run since I have no more Pokemon in my party. Or I could risk losing some Viper to an optional, and then losing the run after that. I decided to just push through, and he was blind. I know there was no point including that in the video, but I just wanted you to peek into my head during these moments. We're once again running low, but here we have two more guaranteed encounters, Machop and Spoink. Machop in particular could be very useful later, but I need to decide when. For Flannery, however, we're bringing back Pelipper to the team. We can get through her entire gym without fighting a single trainer, so no sacrifices needed here. I also had a couple of Pokemon for backup. Combusken's actually pretty good for Flannery with him naturally learning Bulk Up, and I also had Solrock as he has a type advantage. I'm even less confident that I can beat her with one Mon than I was with Watson. Pelipper's able to one-shot Numel, Slugma, and Camerupt with the water gun. But Torkoal's the scariest Pokemon here. We outspeed to land a crit, but it doesn't get the kill, so it doesn't really matter. Torkoal uses Attract, infatuating Pelipper and ruining our chances of doing this battle solo. Infatuation turns every move into a 50-50 and stays until either the end of the battle or you switch out. Flannery heals up and then sets up the sun, so even on turns that we do hit Water Gun, it does far less. She uses a couple of weak body slams and finishes up with a not very effective overheat, doing well over half, taking Pelipper down. Overheat lowers the user's special attack by 2 stages, but Flannery's Torkoal holds a white herb, allowing her to recover those stats back. I've always thought that was such a cool and ballsy thing to include for a mid-game gym leader. I wish they stuck to using stress like that for other gym leaders too, but they became cowards. Anyway, I bring out Solrock, who doesn't understand love and resists all of Torkoal's attacks, and I can just spam a few rock throws until Torkoal goes down. That's the 4th badge. I think from here on out, it's pretty much guaranteed that we'll need 2 Pokemon per important battle. It's sad because I really wanted to use Solrock for an important battle later on, but it was my only guaranteed win con. Well, despite us losing 2 encounters, we can actually recoup our losses by getting 4 encounters immediately. May gifts us with the Goat Goggles, allowing us to actually enter the desert. This is still Route 111, but since we only caught Geodude, we still have 1 more encounter here. But that's not it. In Pokemon Emerald, there's a chance for the Mirage Tower to show up. And since this is a new area, we can get 2 encounters here as well, both being guaranteed, Sandslash and Trapinch. And then on the top floor, we can get ourselves a fossil to restore. I pick Anorith since despite liking Cradily, it just doesn't get that many good moves in this generation. This means that we've brought the 4 possible encounters in the desert down to 2, Cacnea and Baltoy. We land our 3rd ground type in a row. This isn't too bad, pretty much all of these Pokemon are disposable anyway. One of which we actually have to use up immediately on the way back to Rustboro. In the cave, there's a hiker standing in our way. Sandslash doesn't learn a single ground move via level up. He's easily the most useless one here. Oh sorry, he does get one. Sand Tomb, a 15 base power move with an 85% accuracy, which he learns at level 52. Goodbye Sandslash. Oh my god, how? Go away. And in Rustboro, we can make up the difference by reviving Anorith, and now we have the perfect encounters for Norman, the normal type gym leader. But just as quickly as we got them, we're about to have a purge. To get to Norman, we had to fight 3 forced battles, and some of the gym trainers can actually be quite tough. And even though we have quite a few disposable Pokemon, are they even strong enough to take on a battle of their own? Well, the way Norman's gym works is that you can choose which trainer you want to fight based on their strategy, and there is indeed an optimal path. One that even our disposable Pokemon can handle. The first room is the accuracy trainer. She uses a Delcatty, which is already awful, and only uses moves that have perfect accuracy, no stronger than 60 BP. So we let Baltoy, one of our weakest members, handle her. Next is the recovery room, and this one's easy. This trainer uses Slackoth, which can only move every other turn, and our Anorith has Protect, invalidating this turn. This does take quite a long time, since as the name suggests, this trainer has plenty of ways to recover back any damage he takes, but this only makes the battle longer. Slackoth still can't really do anything to Anorith. And finally it's the one-hit KO room. This one's kind of scary as Vigoroth specializes in getting crits, which could one-shot most of my disposable Pokemon from full. Well, ironically, Viper lands a crit with Poison Tail, getting us past him pretty quickly, leaving us with Norman. This one's an easy battle with our Pokemon. Sableye with immunity to normal, fighting and psychic completely walls half of his team. Spinda does have Teeter Dance to confuse us, however, so we're forced to switch around a little. I didn't even bother to attempt to solo this, bringing out Machamp. For now, he's just here to clear confusion. With Vigoroth out, we can bring out Machamp on the weak Feint attack, take another hit, and then hit back with a boosted Revenge, getting the one-shot. Linoone uses Belly Drum, halving its HP and maximizing its attack, but Sableye completely walls, him not having a single move to hit us. And finally it's Slacking. This one also can only move once every other turn, but has the stats of a legendary. Sableye has Detect, which is basically Protect with less PP, but can't really do much in return. I just spam Feint attack every other turn until Detect only has 1 PP left. And now on the turn that Slacking can't move, I switch into Machamp. This was a bit of a mistake. Had I switched on a turn that I could have moved, I would have taken a weaker attack, but now we have to take a strong Facade, leaving us in the red. Machamp hits back with a super effective boosted Revenge, bringing Slacking down and earning us the 5th badge. In one gym, we've lost 5 Pokemon, and this is only the beginning of the Pokemon Purge. With access to Surf, we're about to have one of the most trainer-dense sections in Pokemon. Forced battles, mind you. But with new areas unlocked, that means new encounters. What a weird thing to say after giving me a gift. Now obviously I'm going to be thinking that you're bribing me into being his friend. What's he hiding? But before we can get any more encounters, we have to sacrifice 2 more Pokemon. From Petalburg, we have to get all the way to Moorville. We still don't have Fly, but we can get there pretty safely by taking the Surf route on the second route, only dodging 1 wildcard from earlier. But as we head east to the new route, there is of course a double battle blocking the way, both trainers being static. Well, before fighting them, with Surf we can get 2 new Pokemon. Getting the mission from Watson to shut down the generator, we can head to New Moorville to catch both Magnemite and Voltorb. They can actually be solid answers for an upcoming gem I'm dreading. So I decided to let Grumpig have his moment, and Swablu, while Altaria can be decent, is probably our most useless Pokemon. But after crossing the river, surely now we can recoup our losses, right? Well, remember I mentioned getting Electrike earlier sucked? That's because we're now starting to hit routes where we've already exhausted all the encounters. Electrike would have been a guaranteed Pokemon here, but now there's only the 1% Kecleon, who is a guaranteed static Pokemon later anyway, so there's absolutely no chance I'm spending all that time looking for him. I've already done my rare Pokemon challenge this month. Well, at the very least we can pick up the Good Rod now, so we're able to fish for a handful of encounters, one of which being Carvana on this route. We can find this anywhere, but since there aren't any other valid encounters here, we may as well catch it now. After dodging another wildcard, we're onto a route that terrifies me. This whole section is also a minefield, and to this day I still mess up and run into trainers accidentally. Thankfully I at the very least know that going up the middle is somewhat safe, but I always second guess each step. Once again, here we can only get 1 encounter. I find a safe patch of grass and begin hunting for the 9% Tropius. Tropius is such an unfortunate Pokemon. It has such a cool design, but with awful stats that don't work for it whatsoever. Pair that with a horrible typing and it's just kind of useless during a playthrough. Why are its stats so low? It's like they didn't really know what they wanted it to excel at, so they just made all of its stats mediocre. Past here, I thought this ranger was a forced battle, but it turns out that you can just squeeze on by. And all the remaining trainers are also blind. I actually didn't know that. I assumed we would have at least a few wildcards, but this route's pretty safe. Well, that was just to lull me into a false sense of security, as coming up we have the Weather Institute overrun by Team Aqua grunts, which includes not 1, not 2, but 4 forced battles, with an optional 5th one, and then we have to fight May right after that. I was really trying to avoid this without using Fly, but we're really running low on encounters, and many Pokemon I have are necessary for later gyms, so I bite the bullet and make the long journey back to Petalburg, dodging 1, 2, and 3 wildcards. Not really that bad, but there are quite a few blind trainers that could catch me off guard. Here we can fish for a guaranteed Corphish and Goldeen, which is such an awful Pokemon, especially after evolving into Seaking. Its design sucks, it has awful stats, and it's yet another pure water type, and it doesn't even learn any water moves by level up until level 41. We could have gotten this one earlier, but I purposely held off until I got the HM for Surf, so we could at least teach it that. Well, at least as perfect as a disposable Pokemon. And in contrast, I get a Wilma from the ocean to the west, whose line I absolutely adore. It just looks like she's having the time of her life. And Wailord Big, what's not to love? And Wailord's actually a pretty decent Pokemon too. And I think that's it. There's a Pokemon that we could get in Meteor Falls with our new Good Rod, but I would rather hold off until later for a better one. That being said, with the number of forced battles coming up, we would be eating into our powerhouses, who we still need for upcoming battles. Oh god, don't make me look for him. With no other choice, before heading back into the institute, I spent 2 hours of my life looking for the 1% Kecleon, a Pokemon that's guaranteed later, might I remind you. Why is it when I want to find a rare Pokemon, I never do? But eventually, there he is. So, dodging the wildcard, we make our way back to the Weather Institute and begin the purge. At least now I have a pretty clear idea of who I'm fine getting rid of. The first is Trapinch. Look, I really wanted to try using Flygon, but it just isn't a very good Pokemon, no matter how much I want him to be. It even has the same attacking stat as Trapinch. Next we have a double battle. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Kecleon and Seaking. And finally is the Team Aqua admin, and I decided to use up Crawdaunt. Out of all of them, she's the one I felt the most conflicted about. Getting rid of my dark types now isn't that great of an idea, as pretty much any dark type would be incredibly helpful for an upcoming boss battle. But I figure that we'll get some guaranteed ones later anyway. It's not all a loss though. Rewarded for our bravery, thwarting the villainous Team Aqua, we're given a Cast Form. Cast Form is such a bad Pokemon. Its gimmick is that it changes form during the weather, but its stats and move pool are so awful that you would rather just have a Pokemon of that type. And also, what is this thing even supposed to be? I don't even think I'm allowed to say what I think it is on YouTube. Changes form in weather. Yeah, sure, it's cold outside. And this thing is about to save our run. On the route towards the next city, we only need to fight May, and despite my shit talking earlier, Tropius is actually the perfect Pokemon for this battle. Lombraid's a pretty weak Pokemon, and this one can only use normal moves against us. I set up 2 Growths, doubling our special attack, and then use a couple of magical leaves, as she switches out to Slugma. I mean, works for us, that's a free hit on a Pokemon with a type advantage, but even if this didn't happen, the rain would weaken any fire moves anyway. And then after finishing Lombraid off, we have Marsh Stomp, who's 4 times weak to grass moves. And beating May finally grants us a HM that will make our lives so much easier. Fly now means that we no longer have to worry about dodging all the trainers between cities we've already been to. This is more of a me thing than something that actually affects the video. These wildcards haven't been good for my heart. But before we can use it, we need to get the next badge, and this gym's no joke. Once again, there are 3 force battles before Winona, and while one is free, there's a double battle which is surprisingly tough, especially for a gym trainer. They use Pokemon like Swallow, Pelipper, and Zasu in one battle. I don't really think that we can use disposable Pokemon for that one. But before needing to fight her, we can get 2 new guaranteed encounters. The first is 9% Absol, who is a great Pokemon, and there's a number of battles she could be very useful in. And the other is the 1% Seedot. We ran into one earlier, and now we have to look for one again. Oh, and Kecleon is also a 1% encounter on this route. Guess who I ran into first? Fuck you. Many evolutionary stones are found pretty late into the game, so Pokemon like Nuzleaf aren't really that useful for this challenge. But it's also a grass type, weak to flying, so I decided to use an otherwise great Pokemon for a random. For the double battle, I sent out Magneton and Nuzleaf. Nuzleaf's only here so I don't have to waste a different Pokemon, and Magneton deals with all of the rest of their Pokemon. There's another force battle, so goodbye Electrode. But with all of our electric types gone, who are we gonna use against Winona? One of the hardest gym leaders in the game. I didn't bother grabbing Ice Beam as there might be a risk to me losing even more Pokemon during trainer battles. So even my water Pokemon are pretty useless here. Well, like I said, we have a Pokemon that will save the run. Winona leads with Swirlblue, and I sent out Cast Form. This absolute shitmon is Winona's worst nightmare. We use the first turn to set up Hail, Cast Form transforming into an Ice type as Swirlblue fails Mirror move. And now her signature move Weather Ball is a base 100 power Ice type move, which also gets the stab buff since we're an Ice type now. Of course one-shotting this poor creature. Skarmory comes out as it has a type advantage, but we can outspeed to use Sunny Day, transforming into a fire type, and eating the now resisted Steel Wing. And now this time Weather Ball's a fire type move, which alongside the previously listed advantages, also gets a 50% boost thanks to the sun. One shot. Next is Pelipper, and while we don't have a super effective move this time, Ice is neutral, so after we set up Hail on the turn it uses Protect, it goes down in 2 hits. Tropius is 4 times weak to Ice, one shot. And finally it's the big scary Altaria, who has Dragon Dance raising both attack and speed. One shot. I bet all of you who slandered Cast Form in the past feel real bad now, huh? Think again before speaking ill of Cast Form's name. I mean, it's still a pretty bad Pokemon, it just so happens that she perfectly counters Winona's team. I actually only just recently found this out while playing through a challenge I've scrapped for now. I never understood just how amazing cast form could be in the right context. Now with our team even lonelier than it was before, we're actually really struggling with maintaining a full team. Even the next route only has one Pokemon we can catch, Shuppet. Thankfully all the trainers here are blind except for one wildcard. This is starting to get pretty rough, especially considering we have yet another Team Aqua session coming up. But with access to the Safari Zone and Vampire, we have 4 new encounters available. Well, it turns out that we can't enter the Safari Zone until we get the Pokeblock case from Lily Cove City. And to get there, we need to dodge 2 more wildcards. There's a department store here which sells TMs that we could use, but maze blocking the entrance and we're not really in a position to fight optionals. So grab the case, dodge the 2 wildcards again, and we're clear for the Safari Zone. There's a PC here, so this is a good place to switch around my team without needing to dodge any more trainers. In the Safari Zone, we have a handful of encounters to choose from, as specific Pokemon are in specific zones. But truth be told, every Pokemon here, except the really rare ones, are disposable. So I opt to grab Doduo and Girafarig, who can at least hold their own. And then in Vampire, we can head straight outside to get Vulpix and the lesser common ghost, Duskull. Or we land the 2% Chimecho. I'll be honest, I don't even know what this Pokemon does. I'm assuming it's not very good. For the longest time, I always assumed that Duskull was a version exclusive, but it never occurred to me that was just a rare encounter. Well, here we could get the TM for Shadow Ball, but to get there we have to dodge a gauntlet of trainers, and the risk is too high. This may be needed for a battle well into the future, so we can hold off for now, but really I'm not too confident. And just as we got those Pokemon, we're forced to give them up. The only survivor being Dodrio, who I believe is the stronger one. God, this really isn't looking too good, because right after this, we have another Team Magma segment, which means yet even more forced battles. I'm gonna be honest, I don't even think we have enough encounters to make it a maxi, let alone finish the game. Hey, but while I'm losing encounters, surely I must be gaining subscribers, right? Cause you, yes you, you're looking at the subscribe button right now. Press it. Wait, unless you already subscribed to me, in that case I think that unsubscribes you, so don't press it if. I mean the like button's right there as well, so thanks. But there are a couple of Pokemon that we can get. Back in Laveridge Town, we can get the egg for Why Not. I skipped this earlier because to be honest, I don't even think this Pokemon is useful as a disposable one. Wobbuffet can only use Counter and Mirror Coat to attack enemies, both moves which reflect the damage she's taken, but that requires us to predict the AI, many of whom use moves at random, but we're desperate. There's also a hidden route above Rustboro, Route 115, which I always forget about. But to get to the only patch of grass, we have a forced battle and there's only one Pokemon that we can get here, so we'd just be breaking even. Fine, let's just see how bad this is. Back through the Jagged Pass, we can unlock the doors to the Team Magma hideout, and immediately we have a forced battle right through the gate. Goodbye Dodrio. And then literally in the next room, another forced battle. I somehow actually managed to get a win with Wobbuffet this time against a random move trainer. Most of Numble's moves are physical, so I just spammed Counter. Are you serious? We aren't even in the final room yet, and there's already another forced battle. This isn't even the trainer gauntlet before Maxi. Listen, before I used any of my good encounters, I decided to check the footage of one of my previous runs to see if we even have enough Pokemon. And just to get to Maxi, we need to fight 6 more grunts. We do not have 6 Pokemon, let alone 1 for Maxi. And there's only 1 extra encounter I can get, so by my rule set outlined at the very start, this run's pretty much lost. But here's the thing. Sure, I lost 2 Pokemon to optionals, but even if we did have them, right after the Team Magma base, we have to do the Team Aqua base, and there aren't any new encounters before then. So with the set rules, this challenge is basically just impossible, which means now I can either admit defeat, or we can change up the rules ever so slightly, since they were technically defective in the first place. I mean, it's a bit unfair to force a reset if the challenge was impossible from the start, right? Yeah, I opt for the latter. So after some thinking, I came up with something on the fly that I was somewhat happy with. Now on any routes where we have already exhausted every encounter, in the sense that we've caught all the available Pokemon, but we still have encounter slots left over, we can waive the dupes clause. Meaning we can catch a Pokemon that we've already gotten before if there are literally no other options, and we still have encounters left over. For example, on the route before Vampire, I only caught Shuppet, which means that we still have 1 more slot open, so I can go back there and catch the first Pokemon I land, which ends up being Poochyena. This means that we still have our set limit and our encounters are still random, but we aren't locked from actually completing the game. I'll also be introducing a local dupes clause. For example, in the Magma hideout, we can catch the Geodude line and Torkoal. Since I have 2 slots open here, with the local dupes clause, I can't just catch 2 Geodude. I have to catch 1 Geodude and 1 Torkoal. This is mainly to prevent myself from amassing an army of Gyarados. But on that note, this new rule will not be applied to any water routes. Because I know it's an old meme, but no really, Hoenn has far too much water. The amount of water routes in this game is insane. I reckon this challenge wouldn't be nearly as fun if I'm just fighting every trainer with a Tentacruel. I hope this doesn't come across as too cheesy, as I did kind of come up with it on the spot, and I can understand if it doesn't feel right to you considering I'm adding this like 70% into the game. I just didn't feel right resetting the game over something like this, especially since it was a Doom challenge from the start, even if I did run into 2 optionals. With that long ramble over, let's get back to the run. Funnily enough, this doesn't actually add as many encounters as you might think it would. At least for now. Along with the Poochyena, we can head south of that route to 123, which I ignored earlier as we already had every Pokemon. But now we can catch a Shuppet and Gloom. For some reason, the lake which you enter Mount Pyre from is its own route. It's literally like 20 tiles long. Based on the encounters, I decided to include this as a water route, so no new Pokemon. Then a little north of Morville on Route 112, we can catch Numel since the only other encounter here was Marill. Next I head back to the Rustboro Tunnel where the only encounter is Whismur. Since we only used one of the 2 slots here, we can add another Whismur to the team. Well, remember that route I mentioned earlier above Rustboro, Route 115? With our new rule, even if we do need to fight an optional, with 2 new encounters we can still come out with a profit. So goodbye Loudred. First we catch the only new Pokemon here, Jigglypuff. And then we can welcome back Swablu, this time who can now evolve into Altaria. And finally, back into the Magma hideout, we can welcome back Geodude and Torkoal. And that's it. God, I still don't know if this is enough. But at the very least, we know that we most certainly have enough of the Magma base. First on the chopping block is Wigglytuff, then Bayonet, then Gloom. Then in the double battle, we lose both Torkoal and Altaria. We have a Magma admin battle, but their signature Pokemon Camerupt is actually a pretty good counter against them. And finally, we're faced against Maxie for round 2. Why fix what ain't broke? Golem? Are you good, buddy? Golem? Golem goes out with a bang. I was really worried for a moment. 4 flinches in a row, that's just under a 1% chance. Sure Maxie, adept. That's the word, that's what I am. So now we're heading into the Aqua hideout with only 6 Pokemon. Well, here we can actually catch a new one. One of these balls is actually an Electrode, and we can get here without fighting a single trainer. I don't want to have more than one of the same Pokemon at a time, so we leave the other one for now. And before I go on any further, I decided to forego the encounter I wanted in Meteor Falls. Because we caught a Zubat really early into the game, with our rule set, we could have guaranteed us a Bagon, who'll evolve into the pseudo-legendary Salamence. But with how late we actually get him, and considering we can only use it for 1 battle, I decided it's not worth it, and just went for the pathetic little Barboach instead. Disposable Pokemon seem to be a lot more valuable than powerhouses in this economy. Well, with every encounter available to us up until now, we can take on the Aqua Gauntlet. The first set of trainers being a double battle, we lose both Mightyena and Whiscash. I was a bit conflicted about using Mightyena this early, as Dark types would be really useful later, and Absol is a Pokemon that we need for a much later battle. But we're already pretty short on Pokemon again. And then even the next set is another double battle. Okay, I don't really want to lose any of these Pokemon yet. So back to Slateport, we can fish for a Tentacle and Magikarp. This is technically not a water route, but a city, which is fine. And then Tentacruel and Gyarados can go out together again. That leaves us with the admin battle, who Electrode can solo. Electrode goes out with a bang. This game's slowly starting to turn into a survival horror. Literally the sight of a trainer entering the frame makes me flinch now. But with the route open to us, we can finally set sail, with even more encounters on the horizon. Disembarking from Lily Cove, we can make a straight dash to Moss Deep. Alright, we have to sacrifice yet one more Pokemon before encounters truly begin to open up. With our new rules, I feel more comfortable letting Sharpedo go, as now after a safe passage to Moss Deep, we can grab a Super Rod. This opens up new encounters to us, including a couple here. Off the shore, we can catch ourselves another Sharpedo. Moss Deep isn't a water route, it's a city. We still have one more here, but we'll save that for later. With the Super Rod, we can fly back to Lily Cove and catch Staryu. I love Big Man, but this isn't his game. And we'll also grab Tentacle with the old rod, Sissy not Water Root. A keen observer might have noticed that I didn't go back for another encounter back where I caught Tropius after my rule change. And that's because we haven't actually exhausted all the encounters here. There is an insane encounter here that I have no clue how they expected us to figure out back in the day. In this river, there are 6 tiles which hold a chance for you to land a Feebas. These 6 tiles are entirely random and change at certain intervals based on your clock. You literally have to go through every tile to find it, as there are no indicators to tell you which ones are the right ones. And even then, if you are on the right tile, you still only have a 50% chance to get one, so you might miss it entirely. Technically this can be done with any rod, but I was under the impression that the super rod made this easier. This is not true. After reading a comprehensive guide on Reddit, it turns out that if you're fishing on the right tile, there is always a 50% chance to land one regardless of the rod. Listen, I've already done this twice in my life, and that's 2 times too many. I catch myself a Carvana, and whoa, it's a Milotic. Now we go back to Moss Deep and surf all the way to the route just before Evergrande City, where the entrance to Victory Road is. Here we can fish for 2 new Pokemon. Lovedisc, who like Tropius is such an unfortunate Pokemon, and Corsola, who I'll be honest, I completely forgot was in the Emerald Pokedex. Give me all the disposables. And then we can make another long journey to Paciflog Town, where we catch yet another Magikarp and a Wingull. I see houses and a Pokemon Center, so city, not Water Route. And finally, with a real backlog of Pokemon, we can take on the 7th gym. And this gym terrifies me. Not because the gym leaders are particularly hard, but because of how many trainers this gym holds. And this is a puzzle to get through, so I might accidentally log myself into an otherwise blind trainer battle. This is why I spent so much time preparing. The very first room, we're forced into a double battle, and now typically I just rush the trainers since they aren't really that hard and do the puzzles after. But now that I'm actually paying attention, many trainers here are completely optional. I'm still learning things about a game I've maxed out the clock on. I'll spare you the details, but after losing the Paciflog crew, Pelipper and Tentacruel, we only have 2 more force battles, both of which we can fight individually. I decided to sacrifice Lovedisc and Wailord. We can find a new one later. And we're finally on the gym leaders, Tate and Liza, for a double battle. Now people swear by the opinion that these are the hardest gym leaders in the game, but honestly I've never seen it. Unless you're doing a particular challenge which limits what Pokemon you can use, you can just bring 2 dark types and double into Claydol, who you'll likely outspeed. Sharpedo even gets a crit with Crunch, getting the one shot. This crit didn't matter as we would have just fainted the Claydol with Absol before it could move, but now we can do some damage to the incoming Solrock with Bite, and now double into Solrock to get another kill. Now you see these 2 Pokemon on the field, they can't do anything to us, as they only have Psychic type moves, which both our Pokemon are immune to. Now Xatu can confuse us, and in the meantime he's been raising his special defense with Calm Mind, making our attacks weaker, but again neither can do anything to us. That's the 7th badge. I'm a bit sad that we had to use Absol now, but I would rather go through this gym safely than prepare for a battle we might not even get to. We're getting low on Pokemon yet again, but with Dive... oh no... I forgot how many evil team segments there are in this game. Before we can get the HM for Dive, we need to take on Team Magma one final time. So before heading in, some more prep. We still haven't caught a Pokemon here, so we fish up another Wailord and then surf all the way back to Evergrande City and fish up another Lovedisc and Gyarados the 4th. It says City, so not Water Route. I really hope that you can see why I'm being so lenient. I can't remember the last time I managed to hold a full team between 2 gyms. And then north of Moss Deep in Shoal Cave we can get 2 new Pokemon, Spheal and Snorunt. You can only find Snorunt in the lowermost floor, which you can only get during low tide, which is dependent on your system clock, which I just don't want to deal with. Whoa, it's a Glalie, no way. Back to the Moss Deep space station, we have 1 force battle, goodbye Corsola, 2 force battles, goodbye Lovedisc, good lord 5 force battles, goodbye Gyarados, goodbye Wailord, and goodbye Big Man. You know, after the last base, I should be counting myself lucky, but now we have a double battle with Steven against Maxie. We have to pick 3 Pokemon, but Milotic can solo the entire battle, with Steven demonstrating to us why he lost the champion title. And that's finally the last of Maxie. Only cost us 6 more Pokemon. I'm never gonna have a full team, am I? But now we can actually get Dive to replenish a few of our encounters. Southwest of Moss Deep, we can head towards Pseudopolis City. This requires us to go through the underwater, housing a whole new table of encounters. There are multiple underwater routes, but we'll just be counting all of them as 1, so we can only catch 2 Pokemon. I get the common Clampo and Chinchou. I also catch the rare Relicanth for later, but I won't be allowed to use him in battle. and then through to Pseudopolis, we can set our spawn point and catch our favorite power couple, Magikarp and Tentacle. Say it with me, City, not Waterroos. I promise this was the last one. Well, I hope you didn't get too attached to our new Pokemon, because we have yet another Team Aqua segment. Or so I thought, but you can actually get through this entire cave without fighting a single member. Not gonna lie, I never really had a favorite between the two, but this definitely gives Team Aqua the edge. Also, Shelly exists. I like how you can skip a whole admin by just doing a basic strength puzzle. But the question is, can we solo Archie using just Lantern? Lantern's able to get through Martiana in a couple of turns, and even pushes through Confusion with a berry. But turns out Crobat also gets Confuse Ray. This makes taking care of him a lot more painful despite having the type advantage. And by the time the Sharpedo comes out, we've already taken a lot of damage. So despite once again having the type advantage, the answer to that question is no. No, it cannot. Well, the crit didn't help. We bring in Gyarados one final time and wrap up the battle against Archie. And this is actually the final battle of the villain arc, though it's still not the end. I like how Maxie rips into Archie for awakening Kyogre despite literally just 30 minutes ago proclaiming to set off the volcano near Laveridge. Oh, okay, sorry for embarrassing you, I guess. Man, this was the coolest shit back in 2005. Thanks to Groudon and Kyogre, we have even more plot, and that means even more encounters. The first is back in the Origin Cave where the climax took place in the last games, and here we can only get Zubat and Sableye. Well, we already have Crobat in our party, but we can't come back here, so look, we're way beyond doing this the right way. Give me encounters. Dude has the keys, passed down for generations, to an ancient sacred tower locked away for centuries, and during a time of world-ending turmoil, he did not think to look there even once. Water routes have been easy for the most part, but when the path gets narrow, it's so easy to accidentally run into a swimmer. No new encounters here aside from the very illegal Rayquaza, so we catch another Banette and Claydol. When I updated my rules, I was not expecting Banette to be my most common non-water type duplicate. God, Rayquaza's so cool. I've always found it so funny that there wasn't really any climax to Emerald's main story. Like, Rayquaza comes in, tells his kids off for waking up the neighbors, and then goes back to buy cigarettes or something. I've done this gym countless times, but I still looked at a map just so I wouldn't fall, as the run would be over in that very moment. So there isn't a single trainer to lose our Pokemon to, meaning we can finally use a Pokemon I've been saving for this exact battle. Since our Garda was female, she was Juan's first Pokemon, Luvdisc. She could be really annoying with moves that confuse us and attract, which we've already had the pleasure of dealing with during an earlier gym, but now can freely set up Calm Mind, as Luvdisc misses Sweet Kiss. We have a berry, so we may as well keep this going, and she misses another one. The accuracy is like 75%, so it's not bad or anything. I mean, why stop? I would feel bad, but the AI using Confusion is a scummy, weak aura tactic, so Calm Mind. Luvdisc just gives up and uses Water Pulse, which could also confuse, but does far less damage thanks to our special defense boosts. And then Luvdisc misses her third Sweet Kiss in a row. Let's just put this poor thing out of its misery. This was overkill for sure, but we're not taking any risks this late into the game. Crawdon is a dark type but has no dark type moves, and a Shockwave takes care of him in one turn anyway. The next two fall to a Psychic as the Ace Kingdra comes out. I hate Once Kingdra, and this is the main reason I went overboard with the boosts. This thing has the habit of spamming Double Team, raising evasion, and even has Rest to recover HP back. But it opts to try for a 10% freeze instead, failing, and a final Psychic brings Kingdra down in one hit, earning us the final badge. Truly a battle of all time. Well, Kingdra does have the potential to be terrifying after it gets its boosts up, even though it's walled by water types. We have like 3 water type HMs that have a minimum base power of 80. Do better. With every badge in our possession, we can finally take on the Pokémon League and bring this long, arduous challenge to an end. Before we even attempt taking on Victory Road, we need to take stock of what we actually have. We currently have 10 Pokemon, with 2 waiting for us in Victory Road. There are 4 forced battles in Victory Road, and then we have the Pokemon League. 5 battles in a row where we can only bring 6 Pokemon, meaning we have to take each member down with 1 Pokemon. We only have 1 chance to mess up, and it's likely that we'll need 2 for the champion anyway. For the level cap, I usually just say the average of all the Elite Four's aces, but considering the circumstances, I'm just gonna set it to the champion's ace. But that still doesn't change one thing. Our current Pokemon are really not suited for the Elite Four, let alone taking a battle all by themselves. I'm really starting to regret using up Absol so early. We have a couple in the bag, but what do we even do about the champion? The only Pokemon that we have that can stand up against water types are our water types. But what are they going to do in return? The only Pokemon that we have that can boost their stats are weak to water, and Sableye, who's not really known for her power. But there are some Pokemon that I have in mind. Pokemon that have already proven themselves in one of my previous videos. I grab Relicanth from earlier and bring our new Wailord to Pacifilog Town. From here, we head west and sacrifice Clamperl to the Fisherman. Okay, that was a lot closer than I was expecting. We almost lost 2 Pokemon here. This battle is forced, but we can dodge the rest to reach this dive spot taking us to the sealed chamber. After solving the puzzle, we hear doors opening far away, and you already know what I'm getting at. What, you thought I was banning legendaries? I never said that. The only reason Rayquaza is illegal is because he very much exceeds the level cap. I would have gladly used him otherwise. The issue is actually catching them. This is maybe the first time I'm using legendaries in a challenge that specifically doesn't revolve around them, so we have to do this the old-fashioned way. I decided to target Regice first as I figure it'll be the most useful, and all the trainers on the way are blind. I never realized that you can just walk around the pyramids to unlock Regice. I was always under the impression that you had to ride a Mach bike at its top speed without hitting the wall and stopping. You know, like those loose flooring puzzles in the Mirage Tower. I guess one of my friends told me that way back in the day and I just rolled with it well into my adulthood. For Regice, I decided to burn it with Will-O-Wisp so that its attack's halved, and then Wailord can just wall it while I chuck Ultra Balls while it gets weak in the meantime. This of course doesn't work with its low catch rate, and I just go for plan A and use the Master Ball. This was always the plan, but I figured I might get lucky. Well, this was the only one I really wanted, but we may as well try for the others, especially since we have the perfect Pokemon to wall. Next I try to get Registeel. Going east from Fortree City, we only have to dodge 1 wild card, the rest being blind, though I do have to take a bit of a convoluted path to get there. The plan is simple. I weaken it with Surfs with Wailord. Okay, that was a little close. I'm not too invested, but that was still a bit too reckless. And now I'm going to bring in Claydol, who has the move Cosmic Power, which raises both defense stats by 1 stage, and he even resists 2 of its moves. Once we max out our defenses, it can barely do anything to us. Registeel had also been using quite a few superpowers, so its attack was pretty low too. And now I just spam balls. This takes a while, and Registeel has the move Curse, which raises both attack and defense, which it has been spamming an uncomfortable amount now. But honestly, Claydol is pretty bad without wasting TMs on it. We'll just cut our losses if it dies. Oh. After minutes of mashing A and just staring at the sped up ball throwing cycle, it actually staying in was a bit of a jump scare. Not gonna lie, I wasn't expecting it to go that smoothly. But I think having Registeel makes one battle a whole lot easier for us. Well, if Registeel was that easy, then Regirock is more or less guaranteed, as Claydol walls all of his attacks. To get to him, we do have to sacrifice Bayonet to a force battle, but I think that's well worth the trade-off. Regirock has 2 rock-type moves, weak to ground, and superpower, a fighting move weak to psychic. We're not dying even to a max attack crit. But I would really like you to get into the ball soon. I've used like 30 now. Oh god, okay, Claydol's getting pretty low. I was fine losing it against Registeel, but with Bayonet gone, we really need to watch our numbers again. Right, we can at least let someone else take an attack. Oh. That's one way to lose an encounter, I suppose. We were expecting at least 1 loss, so losing Bayonet isn't too bad. And taking the waterfall up to Victory Road, we can immediately catch our next 2 encounters. 2 new ones for that matter. Here we can pick between 3 Pokemon, Hariyama, Lairon, and Mawile, as they're all located on specific floors. We picked the former 2 as Mawile is pretty bad without its fairy type in Mega. This was another one of those Pokemon that I thought was completely exclusive for the longest time. I mean, I did complete my Pokedex as a child, so surely I found him back then, but I've completely wiped it from my memory. And there's even one more Pokemon that we forgot about. Back near the dive spot to the sealed chamber, we can fish for a new water Pokemon, Horsey. Considering we literally just fought a Kingdra, I'm surprised I didn't know that we could find one for ourselves. It's also weirdly convoluted to evolve in this game. You can't find dragon scales in the overworld, so you need to steal one off a wild Bagon, who only has a 5% chance of holding one. Alright, now let's finally get this over with. Alright, you. Wally's fine. I think his appearance in the remakes make people think that he's a better character than he really is. You see him like 3 times throughout the story. First when you help him catch Rolts, second when you use that Rolts as a doormat to the 3rd gym where he tells you that he's gonna get much stronger, and third, now when he tells you that he's stronger. People seem to have filled in the blanks and gave him this whole anime battle shonen arc headcanon that's persisted since. Anyway, Walrein can deal with all of his Pokemon. We did grossly overlevel him, so that might be why, but he also uses the likes of Delcatty, so it's anyone's guess. I'm surprised his levels are that low considering this is after the last gym with a level cap of 46. The remaining trainers in Victory Road aren't tough, but there goes 3 Pokemon. We lose Seadra, Wailord, and then Claydol. I already know which 6 Pokemon I'm using, but without certain encounters, one of the Elite Four members could be a pain, so I make one final detour. We fly all the way back to Lily Cove City, and with 4 Pokemon that we can use as sacrifices, dodging 2 wildcards on the way, we head back to Mount Pyre. After all, how many bodies do we have that need to be buried? Our goal is simple. We need to make it to the very top. Unfortunately, right as we scale the first floor, we're already faced against 2 forced battles, with a wild card that we need to dodge twice. The first one's easy as I can just talk to him, goodbye Sableye, but now after the first dodge, we need to trigger this battle by walking in front of him. The battle's easy, goodbye Tentacruel, but there's a split second where don't look at me. Alright, easy. I thought this was a trainer, but she was something far worse. A Skitty enjoyer. I sure hope those are tears of joy. I should have known that was a bad omen, as when I walk up the stairs, I see my worst nightmare. 2 double wildcards, back to back. Alright, we always get this the first try, and this time's no different, but the second one is cursed. If we weren't trained for this very moment, there's one last wildcard and the remaining ones are spinners, and therefore blind. I just take it very, very slowly until we reach our prize. Shadow Ball. That was one of the riskier routes, so I held off until I knew that we had enough encounters to close off the game. I decided to use our surplus Crobat to send May home, who's still standing in front of the department store. You're like 2 arcs a bit late. Teach a special move to our good Crobat, and we're finally ready to put this challenge behind us. I never do this in a vanilla game, but I'm desperate, so I EV trained, wink wink, my Hariyama to be a speedy boy. This doesn't matter all too much, but I don't want to take any risks. Because of the large level disparity in this Elite Four, our level capped Hariyama can outspeed all of Sydney's Pokemon, and even with the attack drop from Mightyena, we're able to one-shot all of his Pokemon with Brick Break. Now Phoebe was the one I was the most worried about with how bulky her Dusclopses can be, and her first one doing some very annoying moves. Curse basically puts us on a timer, doing 25% each turn, which considering she has 5 Pokemon would just shut the run down. But as it turns out, in Generation 3, Substitute blocks Curse from taking effect. We can set one up on the turn that it uses Protect. I guess the AI don't know about this interaction. A couple of Aerial Aces take it down. Bayonet has a super effective move for us, but that Shadow Ball was for none other than our beloved Crobat. She's able to land the one-shot. Dusclops is a bit bulkier, so it's able to break our sub with a nice punch. But since Shadow Ball does more than half, and Phoebe spending a turn to heal, we can just finish it off without taking another attack. Another Bayonet, another Shadow Ball, and finally it's Sableye. This one can spam double team, and that's why we have Aerial Ace. Or we can land a crit so it doesn't have a chance to set it up. Second Elite Four member down. I love Crobat just a little more every time I use it. With Glacier's turn, I think it's about time that our starter has his time to shine. While half of her team are water types, Hercelio doesn't know any water moves, instead having an ice move and Body Slam. Body Slam has a chance to paralyze her, so I gave Blaziken a berry, but in the meantime he can set up some bulk ups. We managed to get away setting up a few bulk ups without getting paralyzed, but Hail's starting to bring our HP low. Since we gave Hariyama Brick Break, the only fighting move Blaziken has is Sky Uppercut, which only has an accuracy of 90%, so we opt to use a Strength instead, which with the boosts gets the one shot. And she already sends out the Ace Walrein. Now this one does have a water move, and I'm not too confident if a neutral Strength can kill, so I risk the 10% chance, and we land another one shot, and Strength, Strength, and Strength. Glacier down. Yeah, Walrein's the only scary Pokemon she has. I was debating which battle I wanted Hariyama and Blaziken for, but I figured with the higher levels, Hariyama would struggle outspeeding Glacier's Pokemon, which could end badly. And lastly it's Drake. Did you forget about this Pokemon? I sure did. Glalie spams Ice Beam, picking up the one-shot on each of his Pokemon, except Kingdra, who gets frozen instead. Sorry buddy. And that leaves us with the champion Wallace. Now I was at a loss on who I'd end up using for the champion. Wallace specializes in water Pokemon, and we've long since lost any Pokemon that could counter them, until I realized that we already have a solution. Last time I played through Emerald, I let Deoxys handle Wallace since the Reggies were already struggling, but considering how it was mostly their challenge, they deserved the glory. Well, now it's about time the Reggies make their comeback. and prove once and for all that they're not the absolute worst sub-legendaries created. Wallace leads with Wailord, and I send out Regice. Regice has a massive special defense, being able to eat Wailord's water spout at max power with ease. Now we don't want to kill Wailord outright, because water spout's damage is based on the health of the user. We just want to lower Wailord's HP with Ice Beam. 2 brings it into the yellow, and I'm not sure if another one will kill, so I play it safe into Registeel. But it turns out that was enough, as Wailord opts to use Blizzard instead, despite being resisted. Which of course crits. Well, that's not the worst thing in the world, as we now know the max amount of damage that Wailord can do to us, with his only other attack being Double Edge, which is also resisted. So, with that knowledge, remember that thing I said about setting up a while back? We now have Registeel, who eats Wailord's attacks, and has Curse, a move raising both attack and defense, but lowering speed. I don't need to spell this out for you. What does Curse even mean when a non-ghost uses it? Registeel spends the next few turns being a gamer. I really hope he doesn't say anything that gets him cancelled. We need him around a bit longer. Wailord hits a few too many blizzards despite having an accuracy of 70%, and then Registeel gets frozen. Of course, it was going far too well. And now we only have enough HP to take like 2 blizzards, assuming none of them crit. But finally one misses, and that was the only one of the 5 that did. And while we don't thaw out, Wailord seems to only be left with double edges, which do even less damage now, thanks to our defense boosts. Come on, it does only 4 points of damage. You can do this, Registeel. Thaw out. How is it this close? Oh my god, finally. Registeel thaws out and recovers back all of his HP using rest, and then waking up thanks to the Chesto Berry. Now take one last double edge, and an Earthquake gets us through Wallace's first Pokemon. Whiscash has Earthquake, but with our boosted defense, it opts to use a weaker Surf. Our own Earthquake still can't get the kill, so Wallace heals. It still only takes 2 hits, but that means that we have to take one more Surf before Whiscash goes down. Gyarados too has Earthquake, but also opts to use Surf, coming off his much weaker special attack, which crits. Now we're starting to get quite low again. Our own strength does over half, but we need to be in a good position for his next Pokemon. I predict the heal and use another strength, but now after taking a Surf, decide to rest up. This time we can't wake up immediately and have to actually stall out the sleep. A crit Earthquake could be bad, but luckily Gyarados just sticks to Surf, so we wake up and finish him off. Tentacruel only has 1 attack to hit us, Hydro Pump, much stronger than Surf, and Tentacruel has a better special attack, so we need to be careful with our HP. I just rest up turn 1. Can't be that bad, right? Hydro Pump does about 40 points of damage, so we can just eat those and use Earthquake when we wake up. Unless he also gets a crit. Alright, we're getting close, but as long as there's no crit, we can rest up. Finally, Tentacruel misses one. So this wasn't my intention, but we've accidentally PP stalled him. Now his only 2 attacks are Sludge Bomb, which is ineffective, and Ice Beam, which we resist. The best part is, since we're already asleep, there's no way that we can get frozen. So take 1 more, and we wake up to use a super effective Earthquake, getting the one-shot. Ludicolo is an annoying Pokemon to deal with. It spams Double Team, making this far less consistent, and gets Leech Seed, which could passively drain our HP, keeping him healthy. But Registeel has a Vendetta. He hits Strength, putting Ludicolo in heal range, and then he hits another one, once again putting Ludicolo in heal range. Registeel doesn't miss hitting his 3rd one in a row, and Ludicolo gives in using a pathetic Surf. Registeel landing his 4th and final Strength, finishing him off. And lastly is the Ace Milotic, but with our attack boosts and Registeel still healthy, a couple of Earthquakes and Milotic, and the Nuzlocke. I was not expecting Registeel to be able to solo the entire champion battle. Honestly, I kept Regice in the back specifically to wrap up the rest of his team, but it never needed to come back out with us staying healthy with the rest. And we beat Pokemon Emerald using all but one of our encounters. Okay, so I messed up a little and realized I used the last Tentacruel twice, once in Victory Road and then again in Vampire. But we technically had enough encounters to make up for that, so let's just ignore it. If you're curious, I fought a total of 7 optional battles and used 2 Pokemon for 5 battles. One of which being Taytonliza, which forces you to use 2, so we won't count that. That means, out of the 94 Pokemon that I trashed, which includes the accidental Tentacruel blunder, there are a total of 83 force battles in the single run through Pokemon Emerald. At least as far as I'm aware. It's totally possible that I ran into an optional without knowing that they were optional. I personally really enjoyed this challenge, and it made Pokemon feel a lot more like a resource management game, somehow the closest it could be to a survival horror. Obviously, if I'm going to do a challenge like this again, I need to revise the rules so I can actually beat the game without changing them halfway through. So we'll need to account for there being around 80 force battles in a standard playthrough. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in seeing more non-Nuzlocke challenges. I know I call this a Nuzlocke, but let's be honest, that's not what this run was really about. And if you have any suggestions or ideas on how I can alter my encounter rule sets. So until then, if you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and I hope you look forward to more videos in the future.